Hey there drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. In today's video, I'd like to help you decide which version of the DJI Mini 3 Pro drone is right for you. Now that's a bit of a trick question and it's an incredibly complicated one to answer because the honest truth is it really depends on a couple of things. Now the tricky part is that the drone's exactly the same no matter which option you choose, so you're going to get the same exact flying experience whether you buy the drone alone and use a controller you already own, or if you buy it with the RCN1 controller, or if you buy it with the brand new DJI RC controller. Those three options are going to give you the exact same flying experience. And what's interesting is this is one of the first drones that DJI is offering as a standalone drone. And I think where that came from was in previous versions of the drones, they offered the drone bound with a controller. So for example, if you bought the Air 2S, you got the drone, you got an RCN1 controller. But then they released as an accessory a smart controller. And a lot of people thought, well, gee, I already own a controller. Now I have to buy a smart controller. What am I going to do with the old controller? So I guess DJI looked at the market and said, we have a lot of fans out there that own a bunch of our drones already, maybe a Mavic 3 or an Air 2S, and they're looking for something smaller that they can fly when they're out with family and friends or going on vacation, and they're going to pick up a Mini 3, so why not let them use the controller they already own? So it's nice that you can start off with just buying the drone. If you already own an RCN1 controller, you can bind it to the drone and you can fly to your heart's content. Now I know there's some confusion out there because a lot of people are thinking, well, how can I use an older controller with a new drone? The Mini 3 Pro uses OcuSync 3 or 03. The older controllers use OcuSync 2. How can it bind with the drone? Well, the software inside the controller is smart enough that when it binds to a drone, it profiles the drone, so it understands exactly what drone you're flying, and it makes the adjustments needed in the transmission topology to accommodate that drone. So if you're flying the Mini 3, you can fly it with an RCN1. If you bind it back to the Air 2S, it's going to change to the profile for the Air 2S. So in a lot of ways, it's like the Swiss Army knife of controllers because you can use it with a bunch of different drones. And I have a couple of those controllers around, and I use them with a lot of my drones. So I'll take a drone and that controller out. Maybe I've got two drones in the car and I'm using the same controller. So that's a real nice advantage there. Now going with the DJI RC, it's a step up because it's got an integrated 5.5-inch display that's incredibly bright. You can use it outdoors. And I like the integrated controller for a lot of different reasons. Primarily, it's a lot simpler to use because if you're flying for an afternoon, if you use the RCN1, you've got to use a phone or a tablet with it. So think about that. You've got to make sure the firmware is up to date on the controller, the firmware is up to date, the application's up to date on your phone. You've charged the controller, you've charged your phone, the cable's working. There's a lot of things over there you got to keep track of. With the DJI RC controller, I basically charge up the drone and head and start flying. When I boot this up, it immediately brings up the DJI Fly application. It already is bound to the drone and I can just start flying. So it's a much simpler way to go. It's got internal storage. I can put an SD card in here so I can do screen grabs. I can do caching to it. So there's a lot more simplicity on this side where I'm not having issues with the application having trouble with other applications running in the background. It's just a cleaner way to go, but it's the most expensive option. So I guess the decision really comes down to what your budget is and what you like to use as a display device. So if you're budget sensitive, starting off with the drone, if you have an RCN1 controller, is hands down the least expensive way to go. So pick up the drone, it comes with the battery, some charging cables and a few other things, some propellers, and you can bind it to an RCN1 controller, and that's great if you already own one of those. If you want to start off with the drone and a controller, the next most expensive option is to go with the drone and the RCN1 controller, and that's a great setup because again, it's bound right out of the box. You basically charge up the batteries, charge up the controller, load up the application on your phone, snap it into the controller, and start flying. You can have a lot of fun with it. If you really want the top of the line option, it's the RC Pro controller, I should say the DJI RC controller, which has the integrated display. Now there's a lot of questions about this too that we've gotten from viewers asking, hey, will this ever work with other drones? I mean, it works today with the Mini 3 Pro, but since it can handle 03, will it work with the Mavic 3? Will it work with the Air 2S? I don't know at this point. We're hoping that the microcode is upgraded to make it work with other drones, because that would be really nice to have this as my main controller and use it with all the drones I fly, because that way I don't even need to bring my phone along with me. So I guess the decision for you comes down to budget, least expensive, next most expensive, top of the line. And the second thing is, how are you going to use it? Because this only has a 5.5-inch display. Now for me, that's perfect. And it's bright enough where I can go outside and see it most days. You're not going to be able to see any tablet in bright sunlight. Let me burst that bubble right now. I know people say, oh, I've got a tablet. I can take it out in bright sunlight and see everything. You really can't. I mean, the sun, it's not just the brightness of the sun, it's the reflection and all the other things going on. So any tablet, and I own them all, if any tablet I have, I've got to find on really sunny days a really nice darker spot to sort of hide in or use a hood on it. So with the 5.5-inch display, it works perfectly for for me, and I love that it's integrated. It's as big as what I use on my phone. Now, if you want to use a tablet though, this isn't going to work for you. So if you want to use something bigger, you've got to go with the RCN1. And this will actually hold all the phones that are on the market today, really, really wide phones, but you can't fit a tablet in there. But there's all kinds of accessories out there on the market that allow you to extend this up. This is just one example where you can clip this in and you can take, say, an iPad mini 5, you can slide it in there, and you can see pretty quickly that I've got a much bigger display. You can even put bigger tablets on there, but I'll be honest with you, you're going to find pretty quickly that the big, heavy tablets are going to make this incredibly top-heavy, and even though they give you a great display, over time you're going to realize, man, I don't really want to be hanging onto that heavy tablet, and you're going to end up with something smaller like this. But I guess that's the fundamental decision between, do I want a larger display, or am I fine with the 5.5 inch? For me, the trade-off is, it's integrated. Like I said before, I like simple things. I'm a simple guy. This is incredibly simple to operate. And again, it's more expensive, but think about it. You're actually getting the RCN1 controller in here and a display and only applications integrated. So it's a tightly integrated solution that works perfectly with the Mini 3 Pro. So again, the decision is up to you, but fundamentally it comes down to your budget. What can you afford? Just like with anything in life, what can you afford and how are you going to use the drone? If you're married to the fact that you need a gigantic display, go with the RCN1 controller. If you're okay with an integrated display that's a little bit smaller, go with the DJI RC controller. And if you're really budget conscious, just buy the drone. And if you have an RCN1 controller, you're all set. If not, you probably can find one in the used market that's not that expensive and just have a lot of fun with the drone. So I hope this clip was helpful. Again, I've had so many questions about this particular item. Which is best, which kit should I go with, that I thought I'd put a clip together and try and help you answer that question. So again, hopefully you found this clip helpful. Thanks an awful lot for watching, and until next time, as always, happy flying.